Well, if it's true that March comes in like a lion, I think it's stuck on the doorway because there's a wind that is whistling, Pat, here. Is it whistling in Donegal? Is it an east wind
I
or
was just
a beast from the
unlike
east?
yourself, Dr. Collins. I believe you were out for a jog this morning.
Oh, very
The
mild
nearest
one.
jog I got was to the front door, looked out and jogged back into the kitchen, got myself a cup of tea. Um, no, Jude, I think it's an east one. There's a real bitter one. it's it's from Portadown, but it's but it's what do you call it? No, it's quite cold. It really
Yeah.
is.
It's the beast from the east. Didn't we have a beast from the east a couple of years ago?
They're talking about that coming back again, but sure. Anyway,
Yeah. There's something going on. Anyway, sure, we'll have a roof over our heads, a cup
uh,
of tea in our hand, and some wonderful things to talk about. This
nearly.
morning, oh, cheers. This morning, we're going to talk about Joe Biden's State of the Union address and Donald Trump's prospects of success. We're going to be looking at Micheál Martin's shared island and Ireland's future. And of course, the Kenova report is coming out this morning about steak knife. So we might need to talk about that as well. But let's start, Pat, with what they call Sleepy Joe. I think he must have had this in mind when he said, in the course of it, I took down the quotation of what he said during the speech. He said he was pretty sharp, but he said, President Roosevelt's purpose was to wake up the Congress and alert the American people that this was no ordinary moment. Freedom and democracy were under assault in the world. Tonight, I come to this same chamber to address the nation. Now it is we who are faced with an unprecedented moment in the history of the Union. Well, they always say that sort of stuff anyway. But apparently he did a fair job. I mean, he wasn't stumbling around. He wasn't Sleepy Joe. He sounded pretty sharp and on the front foot. Did you read any
Yeah,
reports of it,
I
Pat?
was. No, I haven't seen it yet, Jude, but I was listening to RT this morning, and that seemed to be the consensus now. I'm sure during the day other opinions might come out, but they said it was far from the Sleepy Joe that he's been portrayed. Apparently, he was spot on. That it was a very impactful. They said it was almost written as a 35-minute speech, even though it lasted 70 minutes. That he was, it was punching out, and he came out with a couple of great lines. Dude, one of the things I saw that he said, "You can't you can't only respect America when you're winning."
Oh yes,
That's you know
excellent line.
what does he
Excellent.
say? You can't love your country only when you are winning. Like
Uh,
I was but you know another thing that what is Marjorie Taylor Greene? She's a country bumpkin type populist politician. Uh, I'd say she's right up there. An IQ in double figures. No, about 10, but she's very popular. There's a guy called Matt Gaetz. He's probably got an IQ of about 11. And these are the people who are now taking over the Republican Party.
uh,
And Jude, you sort of sit and watch Joe Biden for all his faults. You know, uh, he's probably the last. The according to the Guardian right now, Donald Trump, and I think we're coming on to Donald Trump later.
hmm.
Donald Trump, if the polls are right, Donald Trump is more than likely to win the presidential election.
That's
Now,
right.
okay, the campaign hasn't gone out, but as we stand out, but if the polls were translated to what is November, Donald Trump would win now. It's a scary prospect.
It is. It's also puzzling because the economy in America is roaring ahead. Very low unemployment. All sorts of the stock market's going well. All the sort of economic indicators are in Joe Biden's favor, and yet the public opinion is opposed to him. Now, I thought, a very thoughtful article in the Guardian this morning. I think it's by Simon Jenkins, and he said, put yourself, if you want to understand Donald Trump, put yourself in the shoes of one of his supporters. And he said, one of the things you need to remember is the chances are you are elderly and you're rural. You're not from one of the big cities, and you're not young, and you're not liberal, which most of the people in these cities are. They listen to Trump, and Trump says he'll stop the Mexicans from crossing the border with guns if necessary. Now, we all have, Ireland itself is now experiencing this problem over immigrants. So you can see how that could strike a chord. He says he will execute drug dealers. Now, this war on drugs is going on and on and on. So you might say, well, maybe that's one way of doing it. He says he'll protect American families from gender politics. I'm
Yeah.
not sure what that is. Is he talking about trans people or whatever?
Anybody?
And he says he will leave the idiot Europeans to their petty wars and end Biden's crazy foreign interventions. You know, there's several of those points that ring a bell with me. I would go with that. I so often think, what is America doing on the other side of the world involved in military action or possibility of military action? And if Europe is involved in war, if you think about it, why should the US get in there? I wouldn't be in favor of shooting immigrants or executing
Yeah.
drug dealers, but you can see how he's addressing a problem. And for people
Uh,
who feel they've been neglected, it's nice, clean, clear path.
yeah. Well, as they said, Jude, let's get it down to a ground level. He's appealing to basically the sun readers. That's the people. He's appealing to the sort of working class, non third level educated
Yeah.
people, the guys that work in the garages with their greasy hands and so on. And you know that's pejorative, but that's exactly what he's aiming at, and he's
Right.
playing to that one. You know their values. You know the barroom guys.
But haven't
You
they got
know
a right to, Pat? Haven't they got a right to be heard as well? And
absolutely. But I'm not disputing that. But he's basically he purports to test the white collar lawyers and accountants and the
yeah,
guys who sit in the office and the corporate, and he's portraying the elite as, and he's basically telling the guys in the barroom, have you ever watched Cheers? I'm on
yeah,
your side, guys.
yeah,
See these big guys,
yeah,
run around in their Mercedes and their
yeah.
Rolls Royces. Not, I'm against them as well. But the sort of the total hypocrisy of that and the sort of contradiction is he lives in an apartment where apparently there's a gold doors, where the bathroom has gold fittings and all this sort of, and he what Mar-a-Lago and his own private sort of lifestyle is palatial, if you know
Yeah.
what I
Well,
mean.
but no, but I often wondered about that, Pat. If you cast your mind back to Tony Benn, he was
Yeah.
a lord, I think, and he fought like hell to get lay aside, so to speak, made like an
Uh,
ordinary guy so he could become elected as an MP. Yeah, he was a tough, but he really cared about working class people and worked very hard for them. So could you
yeah.
not say the same about Trump? Like he doesn't want to move to a hovel, but he's prepared to stand up for all these people who feel they've been dispossessed and left behind.
Absolute bollocks, dude.
Huh?
Absolute. He is a total fake.
Would
He
you
no
rather
more
would you
gives
rather
a
he was going down ignoring them then?
no. He's given up a lot of his views previously. There's a guy who wouldn't allow black people to work on his some of his buildings. He wouldn't allow a guy onto his boat. This is a guy who is won't allow certain people onto his parties, etc., etc., etc. But and he was. I'm not 100% certain as to whether it was recorded or not, but he was certainly here to say, "Thank God for stupid people." In other words, he's taking the piss out of them.
That's a
He's
great
basically,
line.
yeah. So I don't buy for a second that it's all about power for him and for, and apparently he can't stand being, the spotlight being on anyone else.
Yeah.
I think he is actually seriously, seriously dangerous. I think he's a narcissist. It's all about him, and he will throw anybody to the wolves, do anything to get elected. But the other thing as well, let's get this clear. See on October 6th, or not October 6th, January 6th, 2021, Jude, that was an attempt to take over the
Uh,
Parliament of the United States of
uh-huh,
America,
uh-huh,
and it
uh-huh.
was led by Donald Trump. So
Yeah,
where are we
yeah.
going?
Well, yeah, yeah, that's true. Although this thing about narcissism, I mean, every politician's a bit like that. All
Jude,
politicians.
yeah, someone. We all, what does they say? We're not all 100% heterosexual. We're not all 100% anything. But
Yeah,
hey, there's a fair bit of difference between 2% homosexual and the guy who's 98% homosexual, and the same with narcissism.
Yeah.
We all have a wee bit of an ego, but hey, Donald Trump's way past the 50%.
Yeah. Well, why would these people, this is what puzzles me. I was puzzled at first when he was elected last time, but they've had an opportunity to see him in office. They've had an opportunity to think about it for 4 years, and they are in increased numbers determined to send him back to the White House. Now, how would you class these people? They obviously believe that he's going to do something for them. And it's not just a flash in the pan. It's extended over a period of nearly 10 years now.
Uh, I can't remember the phrase Hillary Clinton used for them. What was it? I can't remember. I wish I could remember now. But anyway, the deplorables, I think she called
That's
them.
right. That's
Something
right.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
And Jude, they are deplorable because he coarsened American political discourse big time. Like he mocked a disabled reporter. He separated children from their parents at the border and didn't give a shit, put them in cages. He referred to what African countries as shitholes. By the way, in the last couple of weeks of his tape before the election, he ordered executions up and down the country to prove his standing on law and order, the hard man. And apparently he reveled in being compared to Mussolini because to his supporters, that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
If that's the sort of leader we want, why don't we just go whole hog and go for dictatorship and bring back Adolf Hitler?
Well, I mean, we're not going to be involved in, thank God. But
oh no.
At the same time, I must say that article gave me food for thought when they mentioned he says he's going to address the question of immigration, and it's become a real problem throughout the world, the Western world, isn't it? He says he's going to address the question of drugs, and an awful lot of people in the States and in Ireland are pretty damn worried about young people and drugs. He says he's going to protect them from gender politics, and there are a lot of people who are fed up to their back teeth with this whole thing about gender politics. I'll give you a quick example. Did we talk about this? Brenton Rodgers, who said to the girl, "Oh yes, we did talk about it." He said, "Good girl." And then immediately he was leaped upon by, I think, two separate women's groups that he was condescending and so on. Now, there might have been a grain of truth in it, but really it gets irritating when every move you've got to watch in case you say something that'll be fodder or be ammunition for the...
Dr. Collins, the last day when I said to you, had he said good lad at the end of an interview to you, remember he looked at the girl and he says, sort of, "Are we finished? Good girl, see you later."
Yeah.
Jude. Then he said, "Are we finished? Good lad, see you later." There would have been zero. And you tried to say that was a difference. Context. No, there isn't.
I think there is a difference because it's women, and there's no doubt about this. Women have been the underprivileged, put upon gender or sex in history. I mean, they're the ones who had to stay at home. Well, so you're having a referendum in your part of Ireland today about that very thing. What is the place of the woman, and should she be seen as having a special role in the home? So women have, and they're still being lumped with most of the housework, and I would apply in my house as well, and I'm sure it's the same in yours. So women have got a raw deal over history. So therefore, whenever they assert their rights, it's understandable that people should be more sensitive to those than to the people who have been relatively privileged, i.e. people like ourselves.
Yeah, I agree with you. But no, just by the way, the fact that Brenton Rodgers, good girl, dominated sort of headlines for a full weekend, or 3 or 4 days in Scotland in particular, and I saw it got a good outing on social media. I thought to myself, "Good God, this is ridiculous." Good girl, thanks very much. Tell you what, it was neither misogynist nor as condescending. Just a good girl. See you later.
Yeah. What about
you? Clearly never even come into his head to be condescending.
I agree. I actually agree with you, but at the same time, you can see how some women say that's demeaning. You're saying, "I'm a girl." I'm not a girl. I'm a woman of whatever age.
Yeah, but getting back to Trump, Jude.
Petty wars. What petty wars, Pat? What about the petty wars? Talk to me about that, because it does. I mean, would you not be in favor of America staying at home? And if Europeans want to engage in war, let them engage in war.
No, there's an element of truth in that, Jude. There's no doubt about it. But then the other side of the story, look at China and Iran seem to be arming the Russians and the war in Ukraine. There's no doubt about that. In fact, apparently, no doubt in the sense that several of these MI5 type organizations said
Aye.
that their drones being used now by the Russians that are not from Russia. And they're accusing the Iranians of supplying
Yeah.
these drones that are now. So,
Who's doing the
if
accusing,
Ukraine,
Pat?
say
Who's doing
again.
the accusing? Who's doing the accusing?
Probably American Secret
The Americans and
Service,
the
but
Americans.
but hold on. No, the bigger point I'm going to make is if China and Iran is coming in on the side of the Russians, surely the Ukrainians would need the help of maybe the Americans in Europe. So, like,
Yeah.
can we live in an isolated world?
Yeah, yeah. Well, you might say that perhaps some of the action, well, I do believe actually some of the actions of America has led to what happened in Ukraine. In any case, yeah, I can see how that you might say it's oversimplified, but many of the major points that Trump is putting forward, you can see how people whose lives are just seem like dead ends would grasp onto that. And
Absolutely.
I think he's going to be elected. The other thing is
Yeah.
this: we survived the last 4 years. I remember saying that to you, maybe, that whenever Ronnie Reagan came into office, people said, "Oh, geez, we're finished now. This right-wing nut." And in fact, his term in office was relatively successful. I mean, you had the détente and so on, and eventually the Berlin Wall coming down. So we've survived that, and we've survived already one period in office by Trump. So I'd be reasonably optimistic, but it mightn't be all that bad. The fact of the matter is,
Yeah.
Joe Biden, however we want him to succeed, Joe Biden is saying, I'm losing patience with Israel. That is crazy. That is crazy talk. It's like a guy who's saying to somebody driving a car, I'm losing my patience with you. This is the second year that you streak down this main road at 120 miles an hour, and I'm giving you the car to do it. And it's bloody stupid. It doesn't make sense.
I did another thing there this morning. Um, the Americans are saying they're going to build a base, a landing,
Yeah.
and they're going to bring because they've obviously they're now saying Israel has gone too far. I thought it was significant, Jude, that on his way to the State of the Union address last night, I was going to say Donald Trump. Joe Biden's motorcade was actually halted for a while, apparently, by protests about Gaza. So,
Yeah.
Jude, it's starting to hit home in America. I had this idea that was almost homogenous in America, that it was uniform, that everybody on the streets was pro-Israel and all the rest. It's far from it.
That's true.
70% of the polls in America are now very much in favor of a ceasefire. And you're right in a way. I think no, it's disgraceful and it's hypocritical and it's beyond whatever that they're only starting to now start to see they've allowed Israel now to do what for basically 4 or 5 months since October to just murder, kill, maim, destroy, obliterate in Gaza as they wish. And now because the world has turned big time against America
Yep.
and all the rest, they're
Yep.
now sort of coming in with this sort of we're the good guys. Israel has gone too far. Israel went too far, Jude, within about 2 weeks
That's absolutely right. Absolutely
yeah.
right. In fact, even
So
before the 2 weeks, Pat, as we know, for years
yeah,
and years and years before
yeah,
that went too
yeah.
far.
Yeah, exactly. But anyway, so now they're going to build a harbor to deliver an American ships going to bring in aid and so
Uh,
against the Israelis' wall and so on. Jude, and it's all. I think it's all for optics for the election. That America, the good guy, writing to And Jude,
yeah.
I have totally. Okay, you keep telling me I'm well naive and innocent. I used to have this
I do.
half belief that
I never said you. I wouldn't be so foolish as to say you were innocent.
I thought America was on the side at least on some sort of what we say a metaphorical level, if not literally, on the side of the angels. No, they attempted to do good.
Yeah.
I thought the most cynical nation on earth in regard to Israel, what Israel has been doing,
Yeah.
as America.
Yeah.
What at the UN, there was single hand up supporting Israel's genocide. America.
Oh, awful. Really, really, really awful. Okay. Can we maybe move to our own sainted isle, the land of
Yeah.
saints and scholars? you're having a referendum, two referendums today. Okay.
Yeah,
Question, Pat. Are you going to vote?
Jude, I don't know. I really, Jude,
I
it's
know. I know the
frustrating.
answer. I know the answer.
By the
You're
way,
not going to vote.
have you listened to the debate yesterday? And there was a big debate on News at One yesterday.
Yeah.
Patter Tobin and Roderick O'Gorman.
Yeah.
And by the time they were finished, I was more confused than I was when they started. And by the way, there's a whole lot of technical things about whether if you change this, what about the law of inheritance and about all this sort of stuff. I'm going, I really don't understand, and see when you don't understand something, and I'm not going to vote no because I think a lot of it's the reactionary guys are out
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
See when I see a lot of the old conservative guys saying vote no, I'm just no, not for me. But I'm not going to fall into the trap because of that, just because I don't like some of those people or their views, that I'm going to vote yes for something I
Yes,
don't know
yes, I
about
think
because
that is
yeah,
a temptation, isn't it? When you see guys
yeah,
that you normally disapprove of, voting
yeah,
for something or championing the cause, you want to keep away from
yeah,
them. But then, as I say,
yeah.
for example, with Trump, there may be things that he's pushing that are good, and likewise, it might be that some of the things that these more right-wing or
Patter
traditional
Tobin
politicians.
and Patter Tobin's moral stance wouldn't be mine, and he's sort of he's if he has but he's a
Why
very
do you say
decent
that,
guy, and
Pat?
he's a
Why do you say you
no, no,
wouldn't?
know this thing, Jude. Like I'll give you an example. It's back to this abortion thing.
Yeah.
I am totally opposed to abortion, but I am not a woman. And if I got raped, I don't. If I was a woman, I don't think I have any right to tell any woman what she should or should not do. As a certain well-known cleric said to me one day, he says, "Make your own decision, and may God go with you." Well, that's
Uh,
my attitude. I am not voting for abortion, but I am not telling some woman who's raped or whatever, or incest or anything like that, or who's got a child who's
uh,
going to die, that I know I have the prescriptive right to tell her what
hmm,
to do with her body. I
uh,
am not taking that on myself.
uh.
Let her make that decision, and whatever decision she makes, I will support her.
Well, I can see the power of that argument, but I'm not sure that it stands up necessarily to total scrutiny. I mean, we wouldn't say that.
Well, hold on, Dr. Collins. Then tell me what the other arguments, how it stands up to that you have the right, or by the way, not you personally,
Yeah.
that you have the right to tell a woman who's been raped that somebody else has the right to tell her, oh no, by the way, I'm coming into your house and I am telling you, you've been raped, you're pregnant, and I'll make a decision for you.
But there's things that there are roles that women play in the world that we don't just give them a carte blanche any more than we give a carte blanche to men. You wouldn't say, like, we're men, so how can we understand being a mother? And yet, get cases where there's mothers who have killed their children. But
Yeah,
if you wanted to follow that through, you could say, well, I can't understand what the relationship is between a mother and her children, so I would leave it to her. We wouldn't
yeah,
do that. We just wouldn't do that. So
yeah,
I'm saying, at least in theory, we wouldn't go along with that idea. It's a woman's decision on any other area that involves, well, some people see like, again, it comes down to the simple thing, Pat. We've talked about this, not spent too long on it. Comes down to the simple
no,
thing is, do you believe that's a human being in there? If you believe it's a human
yeah,
being in there, then I would say most definitely it's not just the woman's job. Decision. It shouldn't be any more than, this child, a 2-year-old is my child and I can shoot him. But if it's not a human being, if it's some other form of something, then yeah, just blow your nose, throw it out. I agree totally.
yeah,
It would be
yeah,
absurd that anybody would tell you what you should do. But I
yeah.
can't quite,
But
can't quite get past the fact that they may be, in fact, a human being.
yeah, Jude, I've got a massive issue with, and Jude, I've never voted in favor of abortion. I've
Mm.
definitely not, and won't either. But
Mm.
here's the point: where I stop is I have no. Jude, tomorrow morning, if I went out there and reached for an electric wire and it burned my hand to bits, and
Yeah.
a surgeon came along and said, "Hey, look, Pat, the only safe thing to do is cut off your hand." And
Mm.
then my neighbour would go, "Oh no, Pat, I think that's no, you've no right
Mm.
to do that. I'll make a decision for you." I'd say, "Bugger off! It's not your hand." Well,
Oh,
I think a woman's got a right in a certain circumstances where
yeah.
there's clear and yeah,
Yeah, I would agree with that. If it's a question of the woman's health, I mean, you have to decide between essentially the woman's life and the life of the infant or whatever you want to call it, the fetus. Then it seems to me perfectly reasonable that the woman's life would be valued more than that. than the fetus. But that's not what most abortions are about. I think an awful lot are for politics.
No, no. Anyway,
I think
Jude,
we're
we're
playing
not
with
going to
fire
solve
here,
the
Pat.
what?
We're playing with fire here, even bringing this
Yes,
up.
I know. And by the way, Jude, stood up. I used to be on a Friday morning for years. I used to do this thing on Highland Radio, and see if it was dragging. I know we used to do this review of the papers, and
Yeah.
you went from about 10 to 11, an hour from 10 to 11. See, any morning it was dragging, and you started mentioning abortion. Jude, you could see the lights on the switchboard light up like you wouldn't believe. And I remember he's now Father Sean Doherty.
Yeah.
Sean, you were supposed to stay until 11 o'clock. Many's a morning it went way after 11 o'clock. You'd be saying, "Can you stay on to after the news?" Dude, abortion is a subject that's never ending. That everybody's got an opinion on it, and everybody believes they're right.
And funny, and the other thing that people at present are talking about, which is almost equally absorbing, is the question of assisted dying, which I gather in the South they're going to bring in a bill in that. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Jeez.
Well, they're discussing it.
What do
You
you think of
know,
that, Pat? What do you think of that?
Dude, it's like the abortion thing, dude. I am very, I doubt very much I would be voting in favor of it. But then, hey, dude, I'm a Libran. I know apparently we do balance brilliantly. I know we sit on the fence, but
You should have been a
there was a
judge
friend of mine.
then. You should have been a
Uh,
judge of the scales.
so but there was a friend of mine. He was telling me that his mother was dying, and she was dying in agony. And he says, despite all the things and so on, and this is some years back now. And he said, had it been a dog, by the way, this guy was very, very upset about it. He says they would have considered, look at, but he says, yeah, so I don't
Yeah,
know, Jude.
yeah, it's difficult.
Am, sometimes, remember the other side of the story, Jude? I shouldn't even put the two together. But about 100 years ago, one of the royal family, like King Edward or someone, was dying, and they give him someone to knock him off so they could announce his death in the Times in the morning. They didn't want him dying in the evening, or the afternoon, so they'd have to put it in the London Evening Standard or
Well,
something.
there are people who are just a tiny bit suspicious at the ease and suddenness, comparative suddenness of the death of Queen Elizabeth II.
Uh,
She didn't linger very long, and she just simply died fairly suddenly, really. Okay, listen, let's move on to some other topics, because those are both really, really interesting topics. I think they're the kind of thing that there are some people who would want to jump on us and condemn us for even mentioning them,
well,
which
they're
I think
going
is
to
wrong.
condemn you for your right wing views, Colin. Like, I'm a real liberal.
Oh, you're safe. You're safe. Snowflake.
Right. The
Okay.
snowflake. Yes.
What do we see? Oh, yeah. The Irish Times had an
Yeah.
editorial, and in it they said that Ireland's future, the proposals and the tone that they're taking, is really prescriptive and doctrinaire, because they've called for a poll by 2030, to which I say, hooray, hooray. That's just about right. That gives you time to get organized, look at what's involved, put together a model or models of what a future Ireland look like, and then have a vote. That's what the Good Friday Agreement said. Relations I think that relations can develop after the poll. That's essentially what the Ireland's future people are saying. And again, the Irish Times condemns them for this. It says it will be revealing to see how many heed any of Ireland's future's list of demands, many of which
Yeah.
hew so closely to, wait for it, Sinn Féin policy as to be
Yeah.
indistinguishable. So
Aye.
there's a touch of death.
You know something. It's like the old Israeli thing. When they were starting to fire the terrorists, Hamas, and all this. You know how it's been set up. The Irish Times editorial referred to Ireland's future as being using uncompromising language and all this sort of stuff. Dude, it's not uncompromising language. They make reference to this thing about the 50. They demanded 50% plus one. That their insistence that should be the norm. That's unreasonable. Dude, with that for 1 single second. 50% plus one is enough to maintain Northern Ireland. What? And that is the current situation. What is unreasonable. The reverse, 50+1 for United Ireland.
I
And by the
agree.
way, that's in the Good Friday Agreement.
I
It
agree
was
completely.
hammered
Yeah,
out by
yeah.
the people on the day, and it was agreed, and it
Mhm.
was passed by a vast majority of people. So
Mhm.
what's uncompromising or unfair about it? And
Well,
by the way, the other thing, Jude, what I think what they're really trying to say, oh, it should be maybe a weighted majority, maybe 66% or something. Jude, if we keep waiting for a weighted majority, we'll be in a limbo for about another 200 years.
well, I,
By the way, the people in the South or the people of Ireland weren't consulted when Northern Ireland was formed. They
mm,
were consulted and will be consulted on a border poll about reunification. By the way, everybody talks about unification. It's
reunification.
reunification.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
you know,
But
a unification or a reunification, or which the original division was never voted on. So it should. It's democratic. It's legal. It's fair.
yeah, I couldn't agree more. The thing is, people are afraid. I think the Irish Times is afraid. A lot of people are from the south, particularly, are afraid that what will happen is there'll be another outbreak of the Troubles. I think that's what it comes
Yeah.
to. Now, there's two approaches you can take to that. One is you can say, well, look, we don't want to risk that. We want people to come willingly and they're part of the family of Irish people, etc. And if that takes 50 years, well and good. Another way of looking at that is to say, no, look, this is the way democracy works. You have elections, and whoever gets elected, that's the guy you have to deal with. It's perfectly reasonable because if you stop to think about it, you could therefore deny any democratic vote in any circumstance. You could say there's a
Jude,
chance that those guys
you
over
hit
there
it
will come out
exactly
and
on the
shoot
head.
you.
The reason Northern Ireland never worked, it was never democratic. It was artificially created. There was never an agreement. It was a cold house, to use that term, for nationalism. See what we're talking about now is democracy at work. If a United Ireland comes about by a vote, by democratic will of a majority, that's fair. You can't argue about that. And by the way, if through threat of violence you hold something back, you know that, well, sure, you're playing into the wrong hands every time. But the other side of the story, by the way, Jude, I was chatting to a loyalist many years ago, and I actually said to him, he says, "Look, Pat," he said, I would be very weary about claiming that there'd be a big, massive loyalist thing." And I says, "Well," he says, "for starters," he says, "there's cameras every which where now." He says, "It'd be very, very difficult to sustain a campaign of violence now." He says, "Because you ever notice," he says, "see when there's something happen now," he says, "within a couple of days, you'll see arrests because they're able to follow cars, they're able to follow who left where." And he says, "The old days of nobody knowing anybody where anybody was going," he says, "that day's long gone." And
Mm.
do you notice now? I was watching a program there about the killing of what is it, Sarah Everard by
Oh
Wayne
yeah.
Cousins, the cop. You did that. The randomness of it was a camera on a bus going past, and he saw a policeman, or what looked like a policeman, stopping a girl. Dude, that's how he was caught. So there's no. My son in his car, he's got a camera in the front of his car just
Uh,
in case
uh,
and a lot of the
dash
cars
cam.
have it as
Dash cam,
well.
they call it.
A
Yeah.
dash cam. That's the I couldn't remember the name. A lot of street cameras, a lot of shops of video cameras. So, like, dude, sustaining now a campaign of violence without the prospect of spending the next 20 years in jail, quite
Mm.
difficult. Anyway,
In any case, I think it's a sort of a principled point. It's odd to see newspapers talking the way they do because it's a point of principle. You either accept democracy or you don't. You
yeah,
say
and then
either
that's the point.
this is what the
But
majority of
dude,
people
that's
want or not.
you had it on the head, big time there, back there. This is the difference now is the fact that anything that's going to happen now will be democratic. What
Mm.
happened in 1921 was not democratic.
Yeah.
So unions are going to have to live with the fact if it comes to a border poll and a sufficient number in Northern Ireland vote for it, that's democracy. Whether they like it or dislike it, it's an irrelevance. It's democracy.
Hmm. Okay, we've only a couple of minutes left, Pat. Are you up to speed with this Kenova report, which is coming out today?
Well, no, no, I'm not up to speed. I've been watching. I
Ah,
was watching Peter Taylor's thing on the other night. It's basically about steak knife. It's about
yeah,
the running of informers. It's
that's right.
about what the role of the state and the troubles and etc. etc. And dude,
But it's only it's only
it's
dealing,
cost
Pat.
millions. It's been say
Yeah,
again,
but
Jude.
it's only dealing with 32 people.
Yeah, exactly. But it's
And
been running for what's been costing millions. But
yeah,
Jude, here's the remember. I think was it John O'Dowd or Jerry Kelly or somebody made the observation. they're saying the IRA were running the Nottingham squad. They said if you really want to get down to it, it was the British who were British intelligence were running the Nottingham squad. So Britain was responsible for the execution of those people because they threw them to the wolves.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, that makes perfect sense to me. Freddie Scappaticci was the head of the Nothing group in the IRA, and he, sought out people and killed them. The fact of the matter is he was a British agent. Everybody knows he was a British agent. And therefore, who was pulling the strings? It was the Brits. So I think what they're saying is that when this comes out, they would be looking for both the IRA and the British government to apologise. What do you think of that? Do you think that's okay? You have less than 2 minutes to decide.
I would presume Mary Lou McDonald and Michelle O'Neill have already their scripts ready. Along the lines, we regret all deaths, and the state actors acted in bad faith and so on. I presume at this stage they have their lines ready now. Jude, the British government, I would love to know what sort of statement they're going to come out with, because they were up to their eyeballs in this. There's no doubt whatsoever.
Well, here's an important point. Neither Mary Lou nor Michelle nor the present British government were involved in making decisions about what happened during the Troubles. This is a new generation. And this is the question. Do you say that it makes sense for Tony Blair to apologize for the famine? I mean, to my mind, that's sort of stupid. Likewise, I think the idea of saying to Michelle O'Neill, do you apologize for what happened at wherever, any of the atrocities that involved Republicans? That's daft. You can't blame people for something they didn't do or weren't even alive at the time.
Tony Blair wasn't apologizing personally for the famine. He was apologizing on behalf of the British state for what happened.
But it's not sort of ridiculous. It's like me. I have a car that bashed some other guy, killed someone in, and I'm driving it now, and I'm going to apologize to people because about this.
No, that's not. That's not comparing.
I don't think even you, a fine mind like yours, can get that inside 10 seconds. Pat, thank you very much.
All the best, Jude.
Okay, we're talking again. Stay out of that eastern wind. Stay out of that eastern wind. Man of your years.
Absolutely.